It's the Art of Action Figures, taking a look at the Bandai Tamashii Nations Dragon Ball Z event exclusive Super Saiyan Gogeta from Z Movie 12 Fusion Reborn, aka Peak Dragon Ball. I might be poking the hornet's nest a little bit with this one of the most controversial releases in the SHFiguarts Dragon Ball line. It's an extremely popular design that's been in high demand for the SHFiguarts line, and Tamashii has made it in probably the most annoying way possible. A very expensive, event exclusive, using their old articulation system, and in a very unfortunate turn of events or case of factory espionage going on in the same year as two alternate third-party knockoff unlicensed Super Saiyan Gogeta Fusion Reborn figures from Demoniacal Fit and KamiOne, formerly known as Tonson Art Toys, both bringing some more modern Dragon Ball engineering to the table, especially the Tonson. So definitely some tough competition for Tamashii putting this out this year. I'm not really sure there was a good way to do it other than don't. I think everybody's made the point by now, but this figure could have come out 3 to 5 years ago and people might have been happy about it, but it just kind of feels a little bit too late. The body's outdated, and don't tell me there's no such thing as a 2.0 body when Tamashii themselves are selling updated versions of Goku that are not using this engineering. Call it whatever you want. This isn't that. So let's just be frank about that. And especially coming on the heels of both of the third parties, it's a tough sell for a lot of people. So why the heck did I buy it? Well, we'll get into that. But before that, let's take a quick tour around this really nice event exclusive packaging. On the front, we have all your brand logos, Bandai Tamashii Nations, Exclusive Edition, Dragon Ball Z, Holographic Toei Animation sticker, Holographic Tamashii Quality sticker, designed by Tamashii Nations in Japan, Bandai Spirits made in China. Warning, ages 15 and up, choking hazard small parts, not for children under 3 years. Product may differ from photo. Really cool black and orange dual tone figure photography that they do for their event exclusive boxes. This time it's dark orange to go with Gogeta's floaties. Pretty good sized, reasonable window. SHFiguarts Super Saiyan Gogeta Exclusive Edition. Quick look at the bottom. Left-hand side, which is how I like to display the event exclusives. Right-hand side, they have a full color photo of the figure, which I'm not a huge fan of this side. Personally, I like styling of the rest of the box a little bit too much. On the back, we have more standard promo photo collage. All your barcodes at the top, just a little bit of window cutout so the light gets in. I haven't opened this yet, so I'm pretty excited. Let's go ahead and break him out. Warning, sharp object. Use adult or adult brain. Go ahead, slice the tape on the right side. Stick the blade under the flap. Pop. Here we have some instructions showing how to interchange the hands. On the other flap, there are more instructions that will probably show you how to change the face, but this ain't my first Figuarts. You can see event exclusive printed 100 more times inside the packaging. Great continuation of the dark orange color inside the box. And here we see Gogeta in the tray. Quick rundown of the accessories, which is probably the first strike for a lot of collectors with this figure. You get 4 alternate faceplates, a neutral face, smirking face, shouting face, and gritting teeth face. 4 pairs of hands, including fists, martial arts hands, clenched finger, open palm hands, splayed finger, open palm hands, and not to be missed, a single right index finger pointing hand to recreate the movie poster or cover art, and finally the halo, which attaches to the head sculpt. And with the accessories, we come to the first major issue that I have with this figure. Here we have the Super Saiyan God Goku, and you can see it also comes with 4 faces and 5 pairs of hands. Pretty comparable loadout. And you might say, well, that's the 2.0 Goku mold. Of course, the Super Saiyan God version is slightly retooled, but they have released this 2 times previously. So we come to Exhibit B, the Son Goku Daima adult version, which you can see comes with 4 faces, 4 pairs of hands, and windswept hair, and a windswept skirt, and it's a completely new body mold. Okay, well, he's got the fancy event exclusive pearlescent paint job, so that must make it worth $80. Exhibit C, the Super Saiyan Vegeta from the Cell Saga with the pearlescent Super Saiyan hair. I don't know, things are starting to look a little bit suspicious. So what should $80 look like? Well, by Tamashi's own admission, we have the good version of Majin Buu. This is the event exclusive from a few years back, but the retail version just got a reissue for right around $80, and you might notice he's huge and a completely unique body mold. Totally different set of design challenges to making what is basically a different version of Goku. A $65 comparison, here we have the phenomenal legendary Super Saiyan Goku. Completely new, re-engineered, redesigned body, and it's incredible. And if you start to entertain the third-party releases, things just get really dire. This is the Demoniacal Fit, which is around 50 or 60 US dollars. But you'll notice he also comes with the Soul Punisher energy effect. And we'll talk about the packaging for this KamiOne Gogeta, but I mean, I don't even need to say anything, right? I think I've made the point. So what the heck is going on? Why is this Gogeta so expensive? Why is it so out of date? And why is it being released the same exact time as two different third-party Gogetas? Obviously, I don't know what goes on behind the scenes, but we can take some clues. There's got to be some leak of information, either from third-party to Tamashi or Tamashi to third-party. The outdated body on Tamashi's Gogeta suggests to me they've maybe been sitting on this for some time, perhaps holding it in their back pocket for, I don't know, economics rainy day that is 2025, or maybe waiting until they were ready to release a Janemba to go alongside it. Maybe they got wind of the two third-party figures being made and decided to release this, or it could very well be the other way around. And the evidence for that is how long it takes Tamashi to develop a figure, especially as they have to go through licensing approvals that third parties do not. It's about a year to 18-month process from what I understand, and during that time, it's entirely possible for some details of their design or their factory orders to leak in China. I think what we have here, plain and simply, is a fusion tax, where the very popular fusion characters, Vegito and Gogeta, relegated as exclusives to basically drive up their price, and it is what it is, folks. I don't know. I'm not in charge over there. Now let's bust him out of the tray. Before we get too deep into the comparisons, let's go ahead and take in some details on Tamashi's Gogeta. I don't have the Dragon Ball Super Broly Gogeta on hand to compare, but even just from pictures, it's clear that the pants are completely new, including the waist and the hip cap pieces. Z Gogeta does have a particularly long crotch and very baggy bottoms of his pants, so that actually makes a good bit of sense. The head sculpt is obviously new. Some people are complaining it's a reused Vegeta head with a bang. It's not. This is no Vegeta head. He does have Vegeta's widow's peak, which he should. I don't know if you know this, but Gogeta is 50% Vegeta, so he should have some resemblance. I think it looks great. I love the hair color. I really like the pearlescent hair, especially for like advanced forms and fusions. I'm not sure about the sparkly floaties. It's accurate to the movie. If you look at the way he is shaded, this was from an animation period in Dragon Ball Z where they were doing like 3 tones of shading and sometimes a highlight tone. I don't think the belt is new, and it probably should be. Z Gogeta's belt tie is much, much longer. Halo is nice and straight. It's a good color, kind of a pale yellow. I think the faces look awesome. I know some people weren't feeling these in the promo shots, and I think those were just bad photos. You can see the halo just pegs into this back piece of his hair. It isn't the tightest connection. I'm not sure if it's supposed to go in further than that, but I have knocked it out a couple of times just moving his head. Here you can see the paint finish on the hair. I think it's awesome. It's pretty close to like the Super Saiyan 2 Goku, another figure that should not have been event exclusive. That's weird. It seems like they have molded these floaties in flesh color because you can see the unpainted ball joint there and then painted them orange. Huh. Yeah, I don't know about that decision. I'm a little worried about the orange paint rubbing off. A little bit of orange mispaint on the back of his collar poof. That's about the only big paint miss that I see, though. Torso and the arms are the same as Broly Gogeta. It's a good sculpt. I think the sculpt is a little bit more refined compared to like your 2.0 Goku arms. Z Gogeta's belt is a darker blue, whereas Super Gogeta is turquoise. And there's actually a little bit of blue highlights on both his belt and his boot wraps. It's a little bit hard to see, but you can tell this kind of transitions from more of a royal blue to almost a navy indigo color around the back. And there is a bit of a gradient on the ties as well. It's also hard to see, but you can see it's lighter blue at the bottom and then gets darker towards the top. Not really sure why they did it that way. And again, I just think this is too short. If you look at him in the movie or on the poster, it should come down to about his knee. Good old 2.0 crotch flaps with their audio feature. From the back, gotta love splitting his butt into 7 segments. I don't know about this design, Tamashii. They seem to love it over there, but I've never been a huge fan. Yeah, it is a newly sculpted waist, and it's bare, hard, white plastic. There is a little bit of a noticeable jump in finish from the hard plastic waist and crotch flaps to his pants, which are probably a PVC and seem to have like a little matte finish and some white highlights over what is like a bluish gray base color. It's really subtle, and I doubt I'm going to be able to capture it on camera, but you can clearly see the difference in finish. Some big, huge chunks taken out of the back of his knees. That doesn't look very good. But the wrinkles are otherwise all right. Not enough kneecap. The boot wraps and the shoes, I think, are the same as DBS Gogeta, just in a glossy black, which I thought should match the vest and armbands in the matte finish, but maybe not. Quick general size comparison. Here's Gogeta next to your standard 2.0 Goku, and you can see they're just about the same height. Alright, getting into the good stuff now. It's Gogeta's 3 different ones. Demoniacal Fit on the left, KamiOne on the right, Bandai in the middle. From left to right, this happens to be the order I would rank these. Let's talk about why, starting with the Demoniacal Fit on the left, longest running third party. Somehow, for all this time, they have gotten away with copying Tamashi's event-exclusive packaging style, keeping the figures fully assembled in the box, and a lot of the time directly lifting mold from official SHFiguarts. As such, they have earned the reputation as perhaps the most dishonorable third party. The positives for Demoniacal Fit, I think they did the best job with the Soul Punisher effect, especially compared to Tamashi's invisible one. It's the least expensive, around $50-60 US. I do like the sash on the belt. I think it's a good length. They've done the most re-engineering of the vest, taking notes from the Boy from the Future trunks with the split at the back, and a different way to attach his floaties at the front and back of the arms. I'm not sure it adds articulation to the mix. We'll see articulation in the next segment. But the last thing that I really like on the Demoniacal Fit is the hair color. Again, kind of taking notes from Boy from the Future Trunks, but you can see the gradient from this like almost very, very light brown to this white chocolate sort of color. I think that looks really good. I think that's the way to do Super Saiyan hair. So what makes it my least favorite? Well, like I said, Demoniacal Fit likes to just kind of kit bash their way to their figures, and in this case, I don't think it really works. They've taken basically the lower body of Super Saiyan 4 Goku, combined it with, I don't know, is this Goku Black? And a little bit of Boy from the Future Trunks. They've put a head sculpt on it that looks nothing like Gogeta. It doesn't look like Gohan either, people. I don't know where that's coming from, but Gohan's hair is like half this volume. And yeah, overall, I just think it's too stocky of a build. Gogeta is pretty thin in the artwork, and this maybe works as like a generic Dragon Ball figure design in Gogeta's outfit, but that's about it for me. I don't think it really looks like him in the movie. It'll blend in nicely with other figures that share this engineering, like if you wanted to put it with Demoniacal Fit's Goku, or I think they have a Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta coming up, which will probably share a lot of this engineering. He doesn't have any pointing hands, and with third parties, the quality control is always going to be a mixed bag. My Gogeta in particular, the neck is really floppy. Like, it shouldn't be moving around when I shake it like that. So, advantages, cost, nice Soul Punisher, cheapest price, good job on the belt, good hair color, and downsides, I don't think the body or the head is accurate at all, no pointing fingers, and some minor quality control misses, like the neck. Now, onto the new guy, the Tamashii exclusive. What did they do right? Personally, I like the head sculpt and the hair color. I know that's maybe a preference thing, but I think they look good. He's got the pointing finger from the poster, which is cool. The shouting face is outstanding and straight out of that artwork. We'll get to the engineering and how quite outdated and pretty stiff this figure is, but that's definitely a downside for me. The sash is not accurate to Z. It's way too expensive. It shouldn't be an event exclusive. And to the people out there saying things like, why would you want a new updated Gogeta to be an event exclusive? Hush. People want an updated Gogeta that is not an event exclusive. Those can be two different concerns. Very conspicuously absent is the Soul Punisher effect. It's like his signature move in everything. It's a sphere cast in some swirly plastic. I don't know how they didn't include that with this release, but it is beyond absurd. I would like 2 pointing finger hands or instant transmission hands for his like airplane mode. And overall, like, the updates are just not very good. The pants don't look that good to me. They're more accurate, sure, but I think this big chunk out of the back of the legs looks bad. The range isn't there, and I'm not sure they're very cohesive from top to bottom, like I mentioned, with the different finish around the waist, the slightly like softer wrinkle pattern in the top of the legs compared to the bottom. Let's look at an example where I think it's done really well. Let's talk about my favorite, the KamiOne Artansen. Overall, I think it's the most accurate, both in terms of the slim silhouette, the baggy pants, and the head sculpt. He comes with a like Fusion Reborn specific hair sculpt with these like slightly curled out spikes that he has when his aura is up and it's kind of billowing over him. He comes with the relaxed smiling face, one of the iconic shots from the movie. He has the Soul Punisher. A lot of people say the DF one's a lot better. I think they're both pretty close, and at least they both have it. I really like this sash. It's the longest and most dynamic sculpt, and I think it looks really good. I really like how bright white the pants are. I think that's most screen accurate, and it's a really unforgiving color because it shows like every single cut and every little gap, and yet somehow theirs is the most seamless design of all of them. Like, that thigh cut there is almost invisible. Same with this bottom of the knee. The cuts have been integrated into the sculpt so artfully. It is like a design masterclass. It is such a well-designed figure. It is custom engineered bottom to top. It's got innovative stuff that most Bandai figures don't even have, like a ball joint at the boot. So going beyond even what the games begin, Goku is going to have with a hinge at the boot. And it's what makes Tonsen or KamiOne the most interesting third-party creator out there for me. All of their releases just seem to have that extra bit of love put into them that makes it clear that they're fans too. And that's important to me, not just taking advantage of the fans. So what's not so great? Well, I talked about the hair color an awful lot on the other two, and not this one, because I really don't like it. It's just too yellow, too saturated, and I think it would look better with either of these finishes. It's a small detail, but the halo is warped. The shoulder joints needed just a little bit of silicone oil, but they're working fine after that. And something that's come to bother me over time with Tonsen is they make the open hands really small. Like, look how short the fingers look on these martial arts hands and the Ki Blast hands. It's kind of weird. He doesn't have pointing hands, but otherwise he is just loaded with accessories, awesome stuff like windswept hair, a windswept vest, and an entire base form head with the same set of faces as the Super Saiyan head. It's just a love letter to the character, and it's what Tamashii should be making. Period. And that's why it's my favorite. Going over the articulation, here we come to the second major issue people might have with this figure. Not a whole lot of surprises here, and that's maybe a problem. It's mostly reusing the 2.0 Gogeta engineering. Like I said, the pants are new, but as far as articulation goes, they're worse than the Dragon Ball Super version. But let's go over it and see where Tamashii can learn. Starting at the head, we've got the old ball hinge style neck. Compare that to Tonsen, which has a dumbbell joint. I think the range is probably going to be comparable between the two. The vest gets in the way, especially on the Tamashii one, since it's glued to the body and can't, like, rotate back as he's looking up. And so, really, he barely looks up at all. Tonsen's vest is removable, of course, and so it can slide back a little bit. If you're careful, you can kind of adjust it to create a little bit of room at the back of the neck. Neither really looks up a satisfying amount. And here's the demoniacal fit, just to compare. None of them really solves looking up in a satisfying way. Both third parties with the movable vest help a little bit. Looking down, however, is no problem. In fact, I've noticed most Dragon Ball figures have excess range looking down. Like, you can push their chin to their chest, and the way that the joints are cut, they still have room to go down even more beyond that. Obviously they can't, and I don't think they really need to. So I'd like to see the shape of maybe the lower and upper neck cuts allow for a little bit more looking up range, sacrifice some of the excess looking down range. But yeah, down is no problem. Likewise, Tonsen and DF really buries the chin, so that's really good. The ball hinge makes it a little bit tricky to tilt side to side. You can use just the lower neck joint, but if you really want to maximize it, you have to kind of swivel that hinge around. It's probably safest to take off the face, position the head in a way that lets you kind of spin. You can rotate that hinge around and it will give you a little bit more range. But definitely the more hand-friendly way to do it is just universal ball joints that can move in any direction. Again, the vest still is a bit of a hindrance on all of these. DF's head is a little wobbly, but it does have a lot of range, so I'll give it that. You may notice I've got his arm flipped upside down. And that's because he can't really raise it up 90 degrees in this orientation. I don't know what is stopping it. There's still more hinge in there, but something is limiting it from getting all the way up 90 degrees. The floaties are on a ball joint with a little bit of space around them, and a lot of people don't like this design. I don't really mind it. I don't know if there's necessarily a better way to do it. I think this at least lets you get it out of the way for a lot of poses, and if you're very, very picky about how it looks when he raises his arm, I think you can probably pop this out and flip it upside down. I don't really care that much myself, so I may not risk it. Ball hinge shoulder does swivel all the way around, sticks out when going straight up because of the shape of the butterfly joint. Butterfly joint is a hinge that just goes forward. It gives you good range going forward, however, so that's good at least. Lets him cross his wrists in the front, but then doesn't give you universal movement around the torso, so his arms go out when raising them up. And behind his back, to compensate for that with the 2.0s, you can use a combination of the hinge and the bicep swivel covered by the shoulder cap to kind of simulate like he's bringing his arm back for a punch. It's just not quite as natural as just a shoulder joint that can move all around the torso. You do get a little bit of pivot on the ball joint, but not a ton. But that does, in theory, let you raise and lower his arm a little. Real quick, Tonson has done a pretty nice job with theirs. The shoulder pads are the same design as Tamashi's ball peg going into the back of the shoulder. Ball hinge for the shoulder joint itself, but then they have the 3.0 style butterfly joint. Ball joint going down into the torso that can pivot in any direction, and you really get a ton more range out of it. Going forward, it's just slightly more limited due to the vest, but still crosses the hands in the front and can raise his arms past vertical straight up and cross his hands behind his back. So the neck is definitely one area. I know people are kind of over the 2.0 design, but the shoulders are really the big one for me. Really the first big improvement that this Gogeta misses out on. DF has a similar design to Tonson as far as the joints. However, the vest structure is really different. They have actually this little black ring that you can see right in there going around the top of the arm that has two straight pegs coming out. The floaty pegs onto those and can rotate around, but doesn't have any pivot to like lift up out of the way. Like the others, you can pop it off and spin it around if you want to have it look right when he's raising his arm. And he also has that like Boy from the Future Trunks split in the back of his vest with kind of middling results. I mean, basically the same range as the Tonson has without this. So maybe an argument that it's overcomplicating it a little bit. And then, of course, like I said, it's the same style, like 3.0 style butterfly joint. Pivots in all directions, which means goes behind the back. His arms really just go straight up. They can't really get inside that. But it is still nice having that 360 degree pivot in there. You can really extend the arm if you want to have him like winding up a big punch. Okay, all three have a bicep swivel. There's no difference in functionality, just some aesthetic differences. You can see DF's is very similar, if not exactly the same as like SHF's Superhero Gohan. I don't think it's the same, actually. Off the top of my head, it's maybe slightly different. I remember Superhero Gohan's arms being a little bit boxier. Bicep swivel working fine there. Same on Tamashi's Gogeta. However, their 2.0 shoulder sculpt does kind of overhang a little bit more. It's not quite as integrated. And for an example of, I think, a nice way to do it, we have the Tonson. There's a bit squeaky, and I think it's the best integrated into the bicep and tricep sculpt here. The way that the bicep like maintains its thickness towards the top, but still manages to pinch in at the shoulder, models that muscle group a little more closely. From behind, you can really see the different approaches. Tamashi's very rounded, almost bubbly muscle shape. DF's is fairly smooth, relying more on the line work. And Tonsen's having a blockier approach, which I think is really well suited for this era of Dragon Ball Z art. The Yamamuro-led Fusion Reborn is very similar in style to the Buu saga. Straight lines were very in. All have double hinge elbows, and I guess the Super Broly Gogeta was this way as well, since it's the same, it appears to be the same arms, but despite the double hinge, barely past 90 degrees. That's not great. That's pretty unacceptable for a modern figure with a double hinge. I'd expect at least that much range. This is the DF, and it gets about 135. And when you care about what you're doing and making it good, Tonsen and DF both getting more the sort of range I would expect from a double hinge elbow. All three have the standard SHFiguarts ball hinge wrists, so you can spin the hinge around, rotate the hands in, out, or up and down, and there's a little bit of wiggle room on the ball. Same story on Tonsen and DF. The only thing I wanted to show on Tonsen is he also has this forearm swivel, which isn't totally necessary since he does have swivel at the wrist, but it can help to show that there's like tension or twisting in the arm. The other notable thing about Tonsen at the wrists is you can see they've cut the wristbands at an angle compared to Tamashi and DF, which just cut them flush straight across. Hard to say if it's an improvement necessarily, it's just something I noticed. At the torso, Bandai has a ball peg going down into a little hinge, and it kind of moves like this. Kind of a weird design, but it's what they were doing all along with the 2.0 figures. Then there's another ball peg at the bottom of the torso going into the waist. All of that together, this Gogeta was one of the better 2.0s, and he can bend forward a whole lot. Past 45. Doesn't get a huge gap at the back, and they've actually kind of sculpted like a little bit of curved muscle anatomy back there. Tonsen, I think, just has some straight ball pegs in there. I'm not sure if they're single or double, but all together gets pretty much the same range and is just a little bit more seamless all the way around and a little bit more organic looking, less of a hard angle, more rounded. And DF is probably modeled on the Ultimate Gohan, which doesn't have great torso articulation. Yeah, it's just a hinge with a ball socket at the top of it, and then maybe another ball joint at the waist. I'm surprised it actually gets pretty close to the same amount of range as the other two. Looks a little bit less flattering at the back than Tonsen's. 2.0s, because their hinge goes like this only, have always struggled with leaning back, and Gogeta is really no exception. He gets a little bit more lean than the typical one, but then there is a big gap at the front. And you can see that's maybe 30 degrees leaning back. Tonsen's gets maybe, I don't know, 5 to 10 degrees further back. Also, tiniest little gap at the front, nothing compared to this one. And the demoniacal fit. I don't know, they're all pretty similar. Tilting side to side. Again, Gogeta was one of the better 2.0s in the torso. Tonsen, pretty comparable. Maybe again 5 to 10 degrees more compared to Bandai. And this is somewhere the superhero Gohan torso just really doesn't work very well because that hinge only goes forward and back, and they tend to be very oval shaped in the torsos, which means they get more range this way than this way. And so you can see it's like 5 degrees tilting to the side. That's pretty rough. And then as far as like just general torso movement, Bandai's is pretty good. You get swivel at both ball joints. It moves reasonably smoothly. The only thing to be careful about is the hinge only goes in the forward direction. Hansen is the most enjoyable to pose. It gets the same maximal range as the Bandai one, but no restrictions as far as hinges that only go one way and not another. And then DF's is the most limited of the bunch. Not terrible, but definitely restricted by the oval shape, the hinge only going forward and back. Onto the hips now. The 2.0 and 3.0 hips are actually pretty similar in the underlying joint. They both have this like hinge swivel combo joint where there's either a straight or a ball peg going into the waist that lets you rotate it forward and back. And then the upper leg piece kind of surrounds this hinge block that can look a bit funny. The major difference is the 2.0s rely on these floating hip caps that rotate with the leg to hide the gap at the top of the leg that is there in order for the hinge to work. People like to joke and call these the butt cheek articulation, which they're not wrong. And yeah, it's a very function over form sort of design, and it doesn't function all that well. I really don't want to see it anymore, but Tamashii insists. Even their new Marvel Gamerverse figures can't escape it. I guess it works okay if the character needs like underpants that are a different color, but still have like a cutoff here, like the Frieza forms. Cyclops, Wolverine, if they get around to that, I'm sure they will. Those are cases where it maybe makes sense to serve as like an extension of the clothing past the crotch piece, but it definitely doesn't just work everywhere like they seem to think it does. For Gogeta, I think the reason they use it is to give him that elongated crotch. If they were to do that and not have this, there would be quite a big gap at the top here, just because of where the leg is pegged into the waist piece. Could they design it differently? Here's the Tonsen. I think this looks so significantly better from every angle. And here you can see it's kind of the same underlying joint structure, the swivel, and then the hinge block on the inside. The major difference with the 3.0 joints is they no longer have those hip caps. Instead, there's like butt plate sculpted onto the back of the waist that covers this gap, which is what you would see on a 2.0 if the hip cap was removed. Tamashii has actually done this on some figures like their Chainsaw Man, where they don't have the hip cap or the butt flap, and you can just see the gaping hole at the back when they raise the leg. Not a fan of that, so I'm glad they at least attempt to address that and cover it. And a lot of people have been confused by what they're doing with their thigh cuts lately. Tonsen is showing the way, basically demonstrating why Tamashii went with this design in the first place and perfecting it. The point is you only see this one seam from the side instead of two seams like Demoniacal Fit because of the thigh cut. And it preserves the silhouette of the pants much better. His legs should be like an A-frame, and you can see DF's gets very, very muddied just because of how many cuts and different surfaces there are. Like, this is too round, this pokes out too far, and then this pinches in too much. So instead of a straight, sort of seamless, unbroken A-frame line, you get this like wiggly, curvy thing. And I think that's part of the reason why this leg design wasn't met with universal popularity, although I'm not sure many people like articulated that. Here's what Tamashi's trying to do. Tamashi, please obtain this figure somehow and figure out your design. In the meantime, we've got this, which is just all sorts of segmented. We already talked about how white is very unforgiving. You can see every cut, every gap. There are quite a few of them here. Real quick, I didn't mention, all of their belt ties are on swivels. Everybody's favorite feature on the 2.0 hips, kick straight back through their butt cheek. And you can see because of the shape of the waist, he doesn't kick forward all the way to 90 unless you start to bring the leg out just a little bit, and then you can get it pretty close. Let's look at DFs next, because this is where Tamashi got themselves into trouble with this butt sculpt that's hard plastic. His leg can no longer go straight back through it. Going forward is pretty good. No issue there. And then we have Tonson, who kicks forward 90 degrees, no problem at all. Doesn't really push past that. This material is not as soft as like Daima Vegeta, where he can like kick his forehead. That's the front to back split. You do have to rotate the waist and kick the back leg out at an angle past his butt. Of all three, the Tonson belt tie makes me the most nervous. It feels the thinnest and most likely to break, especially at that connection. That feels really delicate. Now, kicking the hips out to the side, the DBS Gogeta could do a 180 degree side split, no problem, but this new hip setup for the event exclusive doesn't quite get there. You cannot feed the thigh cut under the crotch flap here. It has to go over it. There's not enough room for it to slide under it like on other figures. And because it has to go over it, you can see it starting to kind of flex and push out as I raise it, and it stops about there. And so if we put both together, that's the best we can do with Bandai's. DF is using kind of the Ultimate Gohan Super Saiyan 4 Goku style hip, and it gets pretty close to full 180 side split. Doesn't quite get all the way there, and Tonson is just putting on a clinic, full 180, maybe even a little past 180 side split. Has these weird little bits hanging down, but I'll take it. Okay, then you've got your normal stuff like thigh swivel. Bandai's goes from about right there to right there. DF probably could go all the way around if you really wanted it to. And then Tonson, because they've got this newer style cut, it only goes in just a little bit, about as much as Bandai's. And then be careful when it goes back. But it can go just about 90 degrees. Big issue I have with the Tamashi figure, we already talked about how he's got these huge cuts out of the back of his leg. Let's hope the knee articulation is great. Spoiler, it's not. These knee pads look too pinched, too small when the leg is straight. And then when the leg is bent, double hinge with less than single hinge range. If you really focus on bending the top joint first and then the bottom one, you can get like 3 degrees more, just past 90. Again, like the elbows. So, like, I don't know what part of the game that is. DF with the Super Saiyan 4 style, double hinge, has full pants in profile, which looks good. Much better from the back. Much better range. Looks pretty good. This is one of the better looking knees in this style that I've seen. It's not too like long and rectangular this way. It comes to a reasonable point, which is what I like to see. Yeah, good range, past 135. So the DF knees are actually pretty great. And then Tonson, once again, just showing off. Maybe slightly more mechanical looking from the side, just with a little bit of a notch, but from the back. And so nicely seamless from the front. I mean, just the way that that kneecap is integrated into those folds, that is just like legendary sculpting. Let's see how the range goes. So without even using the special ankle joint, already past 135 where DF got to. Does get admittedly a little bit boxier shaped, but it's not bad actually. You know what? It kind of is convincing that the top of the knee is like here instead of here. And then I mentioned Tonson also has a ball joint at the top of his boot, which, if you want, gets you basically a 180-degree knee bend. You can see his foot is parallel to the waist. Looks a little funny, but like, I'll take that range. It could come in handy. So point of that joint, it gives you more range bending the knee. It can also bend forward or side to side a little bit and kind of simulate the leg moving and flexing inside his baggy pants. And that's pretty darn cool. Neither of the others has that. I thought for a second this Gogeta exclusive might have it, but it just seems like the boots are a separate piece that pegs on there but doesn't actually move. I know the games begin Goku's going to have a hinge, but I wouldn't mind seeing more of a ball joint that gives you universal motion where possible. And finally, we've got the ankle joints, which for Tamashii are just dumbbell joints. They go down maybe 30 degrees, up maybe 10 degrees, 30 of ankle rocker, toe hinge, and widest stance with feet flat on the floor. Let's go ahead and slide him back. Demoniacal fit swivel hinge joint. I don't think it's got the ball joint like Legendary Super Saiyan. Very little range going up because of the boot. Pretty good range going down. Good ankle rocker, toe hinge, and that's his widest stance. Pretty similar. And then Tonson, because he has that ball joint in there, it's going to help with ankle movement in each direction, and he has Legendary Super Saiyan ball hinge ankles. So if you want him to point the toe as much as possible without the ankle, without moving the boot, it gets to there. And then if you do move the boot, it can get to there. That's really good. Really, really good. Then going forward, you want to push that ball joint backwards so the hinge is toward the back of the foot. Just a little bit of range, and then contribution from the boot, very minimal going forward. Just crazy ankle pivot. Plus, now pivot at the boot. And here's Tonson putting the other two to shame. And you can see why people are praising this figure and its design. A revolutionary Dragon Ball figure in all but name. So where's that leave our exclusive Gogeta? Collectible status, I'm afraid. And I'll talk about what that means in a moment. And with that, we return to this lingering question. Well, why'd I buy this in the first place? You see, really the reason I own this figure and the reason I wanted to make this video is there's something I want to say about collecting that I haven't heard anybody talk about with respect to third-party figures, official figures. And with this Gogeta, this is probably the most extreme case of the official brand doing us dirty and the third party absolutely crushing it. And certainly you will get people out there who are just official brand purists. There's plenty of valid reasons, but one that I have not heard brought up is collectability, which is just baffling to me when we are a community of collectors. And the way that I can prompt you to think about collectability the way I do, think about a retro figure, an old action figure line. I always like to talk about the Super Battle Collection. Now, I don't have the Super Battle Collection Gogeta. It's on my wish list, but that figure goes for like $50 and it's a bar of soap. So that just goes to show you the value of belonging to a collection. Isn't just like a property of it being Bandai, a brand name. That's part of it, but it's bigger than that. It's part of the Super Battle Collection line. It's a numbered item in that collection. It's on the box. It's in whatever booklet they publish. It is an official slot that exists in that line. And I'm not a completionist of Dragon Ball Figuarts by any means, but I certainly will want to own the ones of characters that I really like, and Z Gogeta is like up there in the top list of characters that I want to own. And the eye-opening question that I asked myself on this Gogeta in particular that prompted me to get it is, in 10 years, 20 years, which one of these am I going to be glad is in my collection? Now, that's saying nothing about the durability, which, again, third party, they're already quality control gamble. I would bet it's even more of a durability gamble. Bandai has been at this a long time, and I think they know how to build a figure, a collectible, for longevity. This Tonsen Gogeta sure is nice today, but again, in 10, 20 years, that may not necessarily be the case. Even setting that aside, which one am I going to be happy to have in my collection? And for me, that is absolutely the one that belongs to the Figuarts line. That might just sound like brand loyalty, but to me, there's a subtle distinction there. It's the collection. It's collection loyalty, I guess. And I've talked about occasionally, I don't display all my figures at the same time. I just have a small number of shelves that I rotate figures out periodically. Helps keep things fresh, keeps figures in my hands, which is where I really like them to be. And I feel like figures don't end up getting over-displayed, dusty, discolored, loose joints because they're posed in a way that puts strain. Things like that. It's just how I like to care for my collection, and I like to keep them in the original packaging when they're not on display. And another way to illustrate the collectability is with the packaging itself. This is an official, branded, Dragon Ball Z licensed Gogeta figure. If I put the figure away, it's gonna look like this in the box. Demoniacal Fit is pushing the envelope as far as what is acceptable for a third party to do. Frankly, I don't know how they get away with it. They are, to me, the closest that third parties get to collectability. They at least have character art on the box. Their boxes look similar to Tamashi's event boxes. They don't have the name of the character, but at a glance, if you weren't reading very carefully, you might suspect this was an official. It also helps that they've been able to avoid changing their name, so they're sort of a brand. So Demoniacal Fit is sort of a little subline of its own that you could treat as like an extension of a Figuarts collection, I guess, if you squint. It's maybe like 10% the collectability of the Bandai figures. And that's why, as amazing as this Tonsen or KamiOne Gogeta is, the silliness about the brand name, the Muay Thai fighter packaging with the fake character head and pointless like arm wrap accessories that I'm never going to use ever, and these goofy assemble at your own risk roof packaging with the head sculpts in it, that is not collectible to me. 2 years into making figures and they've already changed their name once, and it's kind of what, I won't say ruins, but certainly spoils the collectability of pretty much every third party except Demoniacal Fit. This is the one and only Figuarts Z Gogeta. It's serviceable. It's a scam, but it is the only Figuarts Z Gogeta. It's the same reason I have this little guy. It's not a great figure, especially by 2025 standards, but it's the SHF Gotenks. And I know there are people out there that want his base form or Super Saiyan 3, and I would not be surprised if they just put a new head on this body and call it a day, because that's what toy companies do. Maybe there'll be a third party that comes along and scratches the itch of what if they made a Gotenks with like the Cell Games Gohan engineering. That would be pretty cool. I'm not sure Tamashii has it in their DNA to just do that willingly themselves. Only time will tell, I guess. But in the meantime, thanks for coming to the Art of Action Figures. I hope you've enjoyed this look at all of the Fusion Reborn Gogetas. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.